Before we get started, actually, we're still admitting people. We are super excited to have Ashley Edwards with us. She's got a lot going on, so I'm going to let her tell you like everything she's involved in. She's involved on the artist side as a musician, playing in several bands. She has a nonprofit. She does a lot for artists, vocal coaching, artist empowerment. There's just so much that we can learn from her. Today we're talking about sync, but I would love it, Ashley, if you would just give us kind of a rundown of who you are, what you're involved in the music industry, kind of like how you got started, just the whole little spiel.
Sure. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As Dawn mentioned, I am an independent artist and proud to be so. I think it's a privilege to make the art that feels most aligned for myself and those I collaborate with. I did get started traveling. I'll kind of take it back. Um, right now, I am involved in many different projects and channels. Both on the creation side and on the supportive side. So I will start first and foremost. I founded a nonprofit at the age of 25. That's about a decade ago. And it's a nonprofit called I Am Music. It's based in Colorado. We support students of all ages, including adults, in music empowerment, education, and events. So we produce festivals. We have started academic programs in the schools. They sort of parallel a Berkeley track in high school at the high school level. We're encouraging, original music writing, how to work together and book shows. So there's many different programming pathways. And the mission and vision of that was really inspired by my own journey as an independent artist at that time. Yeah, touring, playing, 200 shows a year. I think I did that for nearly 10 years. And so that was a whole learning curve and journey on its own. So that's one part of what I do. I'm supporting now as our board president. I've left the organization as an employee, but I'm still supporting the mission and growth, and it's just a big network of independent artists. And in addition to that, I am coaching and supporting like through mentorship programs online, from anything from artist development to creative direction, branding, branding identity, um, into voice and songwriting and performance coaching and things like that. So that's sort of my education piece. I also work with women in women's retreats, and I just got back from when I was just telling Dawn in North Carolina, and working with vocal activation and helping non artists become the artists that we all would love to rise into. And then I also I've started working in sync and writing and building my catalog over the last 2 years, um, and pulling back a lot. I think I've pulled back a lot in the last 5 years or so from playing out as much. I found myself just kind of in that loop that we can get into as independents where, we're literally running from show to show playing, which sounds like the most glamorous thing. It's awesome to play live, but also sustainability wise, funding a band, funding, and really supporting your lifestyle and your wellness and your well being. I realized that sync was a great option to kind of start exploring. So I have a couple bands. One is my solo project. I am working with my partner in Loki Moon. We're releasing music right now, and then I also tour with a project called Tree Speak. We do shows in Europe and tour with a bigger management company who helps us on the booking and management side of things. So I've seen many different sides of the industry, both independent and then smaller labels that really, work with. Again, my whole philosophy as an artist is really staying true to who we are and true to our message, and working within that side of the industry. So I want to make a big disclaimer that in no way would I say I'm exactly where I want to be. However, I think we're always growing, but there's
Yeah.
so much that I've learned that I'm so passionate about sharing, because as an independent, there is no roadmap. There are
Yeah.
people like yourself who create a network to support us and give us tools and tips along the way, but I want to share um, everything that I've learned so that I can be a resource to people that maybe aren't quite doing exactly what they would like to be doing, and also navigating some of these places like sync and creating music for film and TV where there's kind of big black holes. I'll say it's like you can get
Yeah.
into this rabbit hole on Google and YouTube and finding a mentor, and um, so yeah, I'm kind of all over the place in terms of my projects and my mentorship, and I think that I think we're all kind of navigating that in 2024.
Yeah.
We're the jack of all trades, Jills of all trades.
Yes.
So that's currently what I'm doing, and I started traveling a lot in my early 20s, and then just dove right into music. Started writing, started playing guitar and piano, and playing, and then started producing my own music, and yeah, so that's kind of the very shorthand yet long-winded journey into where I am now.
I love it. It's so like I think that's one reason that sync in particular came up so much in like conversations that I have with artists in our membership is because like you said, like everyone's trying to figure out how to navigate, everyone's trying to figure out how to get to the next best place in their career, and like also juggling life and juggling a thousand other things as an independent artist. I mean, you typically do. Usually like writing and recording and releasing your own music isn't the only thing you're doing. And so, yeah, I feel like that's so relatable, just like letting people see kind of your journey and how that has evolved and changed and ebbed and flowed, and like it doesn't have to be one thing forever. You can have that change and evolution. I think that's so beautiful and just such a great reminder for independent artists that like it doesn't have to look like Joe next door. Like you can have your own path and your own journey, and if you're able to sustain with music through like whatever avenue that is, then that's success because it's your own path. So I love that. And like fun fact for those of you in the chat, Ashley is how I got my start actually too. I interned for her nonprofit in college and also like interned for the band you were a part of at that time, which is kind of where I learned more of the PR stuff, I think. But yeah, like just learn so much from you about like the industry in and of itself and the opportunities that lay outside of the traditional models, and like really got my eyes opened in that regard. So it's really fun. It feels very full circle now to have you like coming back and talking to the people that I work with, because I 100% credit so much of like even the birth of Pressed PR to you.
I can only take so much credit for those that are listening, because you've had like such a vision and an eye for what you want to do since day one. And yeah, it's just this is the heart of it too, is anybody on any level of the industry, because
Yeah.
there's such a wide spectrum. It's all, I want to start this conversation in sync by saying, first and foremost, like it really truly comes back to the relationships you have.
Hmm.
No matter how pressed, polished, ready to be represented, photoed, videoed, prime, beautiful website, press package, EPK, no matter where you are in the industry, you have such a gift if you have the ability to foster true
Yeah.
relationship. And yeah, and this is just a testament to that, because I'm also working with Dawn on some of my releases, and I really am so excited to do that, because there's such an interesting difference between reaching out and being like, hey, here I am, and trying to stand out as an artist
Yeah.
versus having that one-on-one relationship.
Yeah.
I think no matter where I would be, I would still probably be reaching out to you because I like the mission of how you serve artists.
Well, thank
So, yeah, it's awesome.
that brings me to like a really good question and kind of topic. A lot of the artists that are in our membership and that are listening to this chat, they have worked with us in some capacity, typically on like press or advertising or something like that. How does sync differ? Like, what is when you're approaching someone and maybe you're going to work with them for them to pitch your music, or maybe you're building that relationship on your own and trying to pitch your music for sync? Like, how is it different from what maybe artists have experienced on the more like promotional side of things when working with their music?
Totally. So, some of my mentors and a lot of folks in doing very well, like success, like,
Yeah.
bringing in over 200K a year from sync licensing. The there's many sides to this answer, but the first one I would say is that you don't have to prove yourself in the same way when you're promoting and marketing your front of the house for performing, touring, release strategy, things like that. Sync can be very anonymous in like there's so much anonymity in how sync works that if you're really good at managing your back of the house, so that's how I first and foremost distinguish it. Front of the house is branding, marketing, how your website is presented, how you list your tour dates, all of your upfront videos, and your links to, Spotify or any preferred platform. Your front of the house is so important as an independent artist looking for booking and releasing. The great side of sync is that there's a lot of anonymity and not as much press or not as much media is required. However, you have to know it's almost like a language that if you don't know how to speak, it's going to be really hard to break through. And so, organizing the back of the house, organizing your metadata, knowing what platforms, knowing how to manage your website and things like this, and even your social media based
Mhm.
on your sync goals. That would be the first thing I would distinguish is it's not as much, hey, this is who I am and this is what I sound like and look like and all the major things I've done. It's way more like, here's the link, here's the my digital footprint,
Uh,
and I have my catalog organized in such a way that it does the speaking for me.
yeah.
So if that makes sense, there's more to it, but I'll start there.
I like that. Do you recommend like artists who are literally just getting started in it? Do you recommend that they try to learn and navigate the sync world on their own, or do you recommend that they look for someone to either mentor or, you know, pitch their music for them, essentially?
I think so. There's a couple, like, I feel like this is where taking it slow and knowing yourself really well, this is the first piece. Like when you're walking into the discovery phase of sync, there's so many kind of like mysterious, like, do I write to sync? Do I write for prompts? Do I try to pitch my music to a library? You're kind of overwhelmed by so many avenues. And what I would say is like find out who you are, find out what you want,
Mhm.
and then start researching mentors and researching online, because if you're looking for everything and just hoping that you'll find your answer, you're going to find so many things you might not even start.
Yeah.
So
Be overwhelmed.
yeah, if you're just getting started in sync, my first question to you is, why do you make music? Why do you want to make money in sync? And how willing are you to stand behind the voice of your own music?
Hmm.
And because I also see that when artists are writing to what they think sync music sounds like, specifically to brands, they'll pivot away from their authenticity,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't land in the music because now you don't have an image to land on. You
Yeah.
have just the music. So first and foremost, find out, give yourself a little prompt. Why do I make music? Why do I want to make income from sync? What am I willing to stand behind in my own music? And what am I willing to sacrifice? If you know that, it's kind of going to give you a broader, actually, just a more informed view of how you want to approach it than just kind of blindly going out there.
Yeah.
So,
That's
yeah.
actually really interesting because a lot of I have not had a ton of conversations about sync. I dabbled, I don't even know if I've talked to you about this outside of work and everything, but I dabbled, like tried to get involved in sync right before the pandemic hit. I went to a like a sync conference in LA and just was like trying to learn about like what is sync and how do you get in, how like what do you have to do and how do you start. Super like base level knowledge. I will not even pretend to be above base level knowledge. It's very base level. But out of that, you know, and in talking with some artists about, again, just like base level, this is what sync is, and maybe you should consider it kind of conversations. A lot of the questions I get, like probably like 9 times out of 10, the artist is going to ask me, do I pitch my own music or do I write specifically for something? And I'm curious to see like what your perspective is on that. Is it one or the other? Is it a combination? Is it depending on like how intense you're pursuing sync? Like what is, I guess, kind of the pulse of that within the sync world?
Yeah, so let me outline three different basic, and again, we're speaking basics, we're not going
Yes.
into anything advanced, but on the basic level, you have prompts, or, this is what this agency is seeking, and here's the prompt.
Mhm.
Right to this, you have X amount of days.
Okay.
So they might put a call out. Maybe you did some searching, or you went to a sync conference and you found out, you kind of found a couple different resources of um, some different prompts that
Yeah.
that are being sent your way.
And you
First
just
and
submit,
foremost, yeah,
right?
do you
Yeah.
want to do you want to write towards that? Great. So work with the prompt. If you're the type of person that has access to a studio, first and foremost, if you're working with a studio for hire, I would not suggest going after anything that is prompt based at all. Briefs are what they're called technically, but when you get a brief that's like, okay, cool, we need a 12-piece funk band kind of vibe with super high energy. If you don't have access to a horn section or really high horn production, things like that. So these briefs might come across and they might be a full spectrum. You could spend your time whittling those down, or you could say, I'm not going to focus on briefs right now. The second kind of bucket are pitching to a library your catalog of music.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's like, here I am, this is what I do, here's this. Will you house this in your library? Um, and the third piece is the third bucket, I guess I would call it, is you've spent some time doing research and you say you want to write for film and TV.
Mhm.
Find the Go on IMDb, find the music supervisors that are working on the shows of the music that you think, or the vision of the show, the feel, the texture, the aesthetic. If you feel like there's maybe a possibility that your music would fit with that vibe, or you really resonate with that show or the music there, then you can pitch your music that way.
Gotcha.
So there's like three main categories of where I would say artists might fall into. Um, and so yeah, if you're going for briefs, have a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge in music production at your fingertips, and be at your studio at home. If
Mhm.
you're going to pitch to a library, make sure that you know what those library pitching terms are, which we'll
Mhm.
get into. But those are where you get into exclusive, non-exclusive really quickly.
Right. Right.
And then, of course, if you're pitching to supervisors that you're researching, that's another process. So hopefully from the outside that's clear, but those are
Yeah.
kind of three main avenues that I would say are available right away.
Sweet. Yeah, I have a lot of follow-up questions to that. Number one, I kind of want to like dive into each just to hear more. So
Hmm.
like talking about the first bucket
Hmm.
for someone trying to just get into this at an entry level, where do you find those? Like what kind of communities are out there? How do you find them?
Yeah. This is great. So, there's a ton of resources to find, resources for sync libraries, or to find music houses. Music houses mean they're already established music supervisors that are curating projects and taking solicitations for writing to a specific brief. So, a
Okay.
music supervisor, right? Their job is to work with the brand, the film, or the TV, production team to find the perfect music. So if they're putting a call out, that's sort of what that looks like. Um, and if you're, yeah, I think that's the first part of your question. Will
Yeah.
you repeat your
Yeah.
question
Just
again?
yeah. Yeah, where do you find them? But it sounds like you can kind of like search for that. For
Okay, yeah, let me pause. So I'm drinking matcha, so I'm a little caffeinated. Um, but the place that you can find, like, so IMDb, you can find music supervisors that way. Usually they're not music houses. So
Okay.
if you're looking for briefs, you can and you want to find a music house, you can go on LinkedIn
Mhm.
and just really do some deep dive there and see what music houses are there. And if you're feeling real, like it also it's based on your experience, and also your confidence in your genre, right? So
Yeah.
if you're like, oh, I think I want to get into sync, I'm a singer songwriter, but I think I want to do like electronic music and pitch for sync. If you're just starting in the electronic music world, probably not a great idea to start pitching to briefs when you don't have the experience.
Right.
So, you know,
Pitch for your
um,
artistry.
yeah, pitch towards your authenticity, pitch towards your artistry. And then if you're looking for libraries, there are a ton of resources to find libraries as well. But I would say that it's interesting because some libraries would like you to pay a subscription fee. And a
Mhm.
lot of the time I get asked, are those even relevant? Will people even find me? Things like that. And yes, if you metadata your music and you're still making on the ground connections. Another really awesome resource is go to sync conferences because the people that you meet there, you're
For like,
meeting
right?
agents,
Yeah.
you're meeting supervisors, you're meeting other musicians that have more know-how than you. So those are, in my opinion, probably some of the best places you can get connected and start to navigate that world. Um, and then for the third category, I would say you're going to be really just again looking on IMDb, looking at some of the film, film who is the production team behind some of these
Mhm.
um, movies and brands and things like that. So you can start to do your research on that level as well. I think let me pull up. I have a little resource list here.
Basically, what I'm hearing though is each bucket comes back to establishing those relationships with somebody, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also when you're in your research phase, having kind of your ducks in a row before you start communicating and representing yourself. So if you
Mhm.
don't have a catalog, meaning your Spotify playlist or your art, your Bandcamp, your SoundCloud, that is not a catalog. That is your front of the house container. And so you want to make sure you're cataloging your music on the back end, which my preferred platform is Disco, so disco.ac.
I think
Um,
that's kind of like become industry standard, hasn't it? Like,
yeah, yeah, and I think that that will help you in itself just understand how to start prepping your music.
yeah. And that like from what I've seen on Disco, it kind of like walks you through the metadata and all of that too, right? Like it kind of really sets you up in a
Yes.
user-friendly way.
Yeah, it's super user friendly and it's laid out in a way that's like, okay, I'm new in this, but I can navigate this. I don't have questions. I can basically set up, what I need to figure out and then start conversation from that.
Outside of a catalog, what are some other things you consider as like these are the assets you need at a
Mhm.
bare minimum?
Yeah, so having your digital footprint, basically what that means is whether it's a link tree or link in bio or your website, that on one page, very simply, there's not a lot of media. There's all the links you need, whether it's your Spotify, your Instagram, your TikTok, your link to YouTube, your digital footprint is that. And if it's all in one space, that's so much easier for someone than having so many different links and so many different avenues. So your digital footprint's important. Having your catalog and having your catalog organized, um, and also, you need to segment your tracks. So if I have a song, say I'm using a song of my band, I'm using a song that we've recorded, I need to make sure that it's pulled out into vocal only, the whole
Mhm.
track, um, bass and drums only,
Mhm.
chorus a cappella only, chorus instrumental only, and then a full instrumental track so that for each song in the back end, you actually have all of that segmented. If you don't have that, um, again, it just, the more that you speak the language, the more that someone's going to want to work with you because also you have to remember that all of these people are on a deadline. Whereas for music venues and touring and things like that, you give them 6 months and you reach out, they have the time.
Yeah.
The sync world is like a 1 week to 3 week turnaround. So if you're pitching your music and you're like, well, I actually don't have my instrumental track yet, I need to contact my producer or my engineer to,
They're like, let's move on. Yeah.
yes. And then also, like, are you ready? Is your music at a level production wise to even have a catalog yet.
Mhm.
So that's the one piece that I would say is the trickiest to communicate to those just stepping in for the first time is it's hard to hear whether your music is ready or not.
Yeah.
And to really be discerning with that. So again, sync conferences, you start to talk to people who are successful, you meet friends, share your music with them, ask them, get feedback, really start being open to criticism. I would say that's going to be your number one um, asset because you're going to get and face rejection 1 out of 100 times. So flexing that muscle early on is really important.
I feel like that's just a good skill to have in the music industry in general.
Yeah. So,
It's a
too,
hard
like when you're listening to a new artist and, even if it's just like a vocal and
Mhm.
a guitar track, super minimal, if your tracks aren't mixed properly and not mastered properly,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to work on that. So, I'd say sending your music out and asking, getting feedback. Is my music, does it sound good on the mix and mastering end and the production end?
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Thanks for sharing all of that. I
Mhm.
think that's super helpful to anyone trying to kind of like figure out where do I start.
Yeah.
So that's great. I'm going to ask a few more questions and then I'm going to open it up for a Q&A just to make sure we have enough time to get everybody's questions in. But I guess kind of one of my questions is a lot of artists, especially in the independent sector, really believe that like sync could be their ticket to financial freedom as an independent artist. Like, do you agree with this? Do you not agree with this? What is your just general viewpoint and how do you view that part of the industry?
Mhm. Yeah, I think again, if you have your ducks in a row, if you're able to be really engaged, because again, that 1 out of 100 number is realistic, even if you have your quote unquote shit together. So if you have all your ducks in a row and your music sounds great and you're segmented, you have a catalog, you're starting to build contacts, you're
Mhm.
starting, similar to PR, you're going to send it out to a ton of outlets and you
Yeah.
get maybe one yes, and so you have to be on top of that numbers game. And
Mhm.
so if you, one of my mentors recently said you should be sending out at least 30, you should be making and sending out at least 30 new contacts a week to be able
Wow.
to be sustainable. And sustainable in his mind is reaching that higher level
Sure.
income and sustainability. But it's obviously it varies for everyone. But if you really work on your production and your sync skills and writing, your songs are sync worthy in terms of they have heads and tails. They're
Mhm.
simple and singular. They're Shazamable, discoverable. There's parallels for characters in film. You have landscapes and moods. You have unapologetic authenticity. If you're willing to start there with your music, and then you're willing to do the work on the back end, you can make 20 grand off of one film trailer, or you can get for a brand, a five to 10K exchange for that song, and then of course royalties on the back end.
Mhm.
So yes, however, it's
You have
not
to
going to
work.
be set and
Yeah.
forget.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to put in the effort. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
absolutely.
On that note too, what is like a typical range in the sync world? Like, like I guess if you get some kind of deal, if you get a placement, like what's I guess maybe the lowest you've seen, and obviously I'm sure it goes extremely high if you're working with major players, but just what's an average range per se?
Yeah, I think so say you want to do, I think something it's I want to distinguish too. There's sync for brands and then there's sync for film and TV, and they're a little different,
Talk
right?
about how they're different. Yeah, talk about how they're different.
So, for example, a brand is going to have speaking and it's going to have an advertisement aspect to it that might completely change your music.
Mm,
Sometimes when a supervisor is looking at something for a brand, the music might be hardly audible. And they might pull back and strip out your lead guitar, and they might pull and enter some new drums, and they might shift and change the music. Um, and you have to be that flexible to say, yeah, that's
right.
fine, we can do that. And that's also room for negotiation, right?
Mhm.
So speaking on brands, anything from the lowest being like $250 to, I would say an average of 2,500 to 10K, depending on what the brand is. But also, I want to remind you that you're not going to be directly working with those brands. You're going to have the middleman who's the supervisor. So
Yep.
the standard of the industry is a 50% cut. So
Mhm.
even if you get the 5,000 yes and you negotiate that, that's going to be 2,500 on the artist end,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so that's one version. And then if you're working in films, and especially if there's, maybe more modest independent,
Yeah.
maybe it could be on Netflix or a Hulu or something like that, and you get a song placed in a film. I would say the average is like 5K for a placement. Again, you're splitting that 50-50 with your supervisor.
Mhm.
And then you have your songwriting royalties on the back end that, that just also is an interesting navigation. But if they change any part of the song or if they themselves kind of pull apart some of those stems and rearrange anything, um, yeah, every step of the way, just make sure that you know your worth and you know your value and you know what you're willing to and not willing to change, and also what you value those changes at. Because I think a lot of independent artists get so excited, they're like, I'll do
Yeah.
whatever I'll do it to get me in. And say that film trailer goes on, or that part of a show, your song gets placed and does really well, you might wish you had negotiated differently.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's a huge variance in what's possible, but right in the beginning, I would say expect to make anywhere from $250 to 5,000, and the $250 might be closer to like a library placement where you had a music
Yeah.
placement, but it was from the catalog of the library, and it may be, 20 seconds for a commercial or something like that. But the numbers that I'm seeing most typically are like the 2,500 to $5,000 range. Um, yeah.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's encouraging for anyone listening and trying to get into it for sure.
Yeah.
I have one more question and then I'm going to open it up for questions, but we've talked a lot about how like relationships are important in this side of the industry. Is there any good networking opportunities out there that like specifically that you would recommend or that you've seen that you would say like this is a great conference or festival or whatever that might be?
Yes. Let me pull up here a couple. Um, Let me grab this. I would check out the Sync Summit, and also it's so funny that this is what it is, but the Durango Songwriters Expo is not in
Yes.
Durango, but it was born here. And
Yeah.
now they're in Denver and in LA. So Denver in September, LA in the spring. And I think it's very unique in the fact that it's very small. So there's like 200 or so, 300 people there, and just to walk you into what something like that looks like and why it's beneficial is you can sign up to just be there and participate and listen to some of the panels and listen to some of the discussions and be there to, bring your guitar or there's a piano there, exchange music, have a great time, just kind of be a fly on the wall. You can also sign up for sync sessions where you actually have a small reel that you've put together of maybe 2 minutes of different songs or different moods, and you play that for industry experts directly. So you have a session. You can usually sign up, I think it's like 3 to 6 sessions over the weekend. And so, for example, the last time I attended, you're pitching to Universal, you're pitching to Fox, you're directly having these conversations, and you're also getting that direct feedback, like,
Yeah.
were they silent? Were they telling you,
Yeah.
hey, the vocals sound great? Or
Yeah.
was it just like, some people in the room, it's like, let's talk after this session
Right.
and let's get this going.
Yeah.
So you can see too, if there's 30 people in a room pitching their music and you're seeing all of this, you're getting like the most hands-on masterclass to see what works and what doesn't. And
Yes.
also see how to stand out as your individual self. I think the most eye-opening thing for me is I think a lot of people who attend the sync conferences end up writing towards that sound. And so if you do have an original sound, it really stands out, which is really cool. And I do think that that's a power move, especially as um, moves more into AI.
Yeah.
It's based on the past, and with music and artists, like music builds culture, right? Brands are all about building culture, and they usually rely on the music to do that. So
Yeah.
if you think about, how you show up and offer
Yeah.
yourself in that way and stand in your corner and be like, this is who I am, this is my
Yeah.
music, it can
Yeah.
be really
We
powerful.
Funnily enough, we've talked about the Durango Songwriter Expo in this industry chat series a few times, and
Mhm.
it's come from different people. Like I think I recommended it one thing we were talking about because I went maybe I cannot remember the year. It had to have been like 2016 or 17. It was a hot minute ago. But you do just get so much like hands-on participation that I haven't seen replicated in any other conference I've been to.
Yeah.
And like you literally get to sit there. At the time I was going like more so as an artist than anything else. I was trying to figure out my path, and you are able to like literally sit there and play your song for somebody and they give you tangible feedback of like this is working, this is not, things like that. I don't think they were doing the sync at that time, but I mean that was a long time ago. So I'm sure that's evolved. But yeah, like it's just so valuable as an artist to get that like in-person tangible feedback from people who know their shit and like
Yeah.
know what's working in the industry. And then on top of that, like you said, the connections in the room, like is such a community driven expo that like you it's hard to not walk away with some kind of connection. Like you really have to be sitting in a corner. So like just the yeah, I feel like outside of even sync, like as an independent artist, that's a great one to go to because so many doors are able to be opened and networking and all of that. So,
Yeah, and I think too, like it's really small, so you don't feel intimidated.
yes.
You're
Oh,
able to be there and
yes.
you're able to see and have a seat at the table.
Love that. Yeah, I love that. Well, sweet. I'm gonna open it up to Q&A. If anybody has a question, now is the time. Ashley is a wealth of knowledge on all things sync, but also like if you want to ask her about something that's not sync related, she has walked the walk and talked the talk, and she can like help you out for sure. So, yeah, like opening it up to Q&A if anyone who's live wants to jump in really quick.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
I don't know if you mentioned it earlier. I missed like the very beginning, but what do you think of sites like are you familiar with like Taxi?
Mhm.
Like I've joined up for something like that in the past, and I feel like you send a lot of stuff in, and you don't know kind of who's really reviewing it. You get kind of vague answers. I feel like a lot of times, and you
Yeah.
know, are they worth pursuing, or is it better off to try and just make your own contacts?
So this is an interesting question. I think that do you also perform, Brian? Or are you mostly working on the back end of the industry now?
Yeah, I do perform. I mean, honestly, not as much as I'd like to at the moment, but I do. I'm kind of trying to get more in that end of it and less in the back end. I mean, I wanted to do some sync in the background, but I'd like to perform a lot more, to be
The,
honest.
the reason why I ask is it's similar to, can you imagine if like you only had a TikTok? Just for example, when you're booking and you're doing and you're trying to build a fan base. My answer to this is if you're willing to go all in, the more spaces that you're taking up, the better. But obviously, you want to make sure that you're budgeting for that. And again, you know your why. If you're on a site like Taxi, is that worth your commitment financially? Does it balance out? And having multiple channels, you're reaching out, you're researching IMDb or iSpot TV, and you are pitching to libraries, and you have your music on Taxi. It does sound like an exhausting a lot of places at once, but I think the benefit of it is, especially in the beginning, you find a couple of your people and then you start working and, cool, I'll shut down my Taxi now and I won't need to go to Durango Songwriter Expo every single year because I'm working with you know what I'm saying? So I think in the beginning, it's great to have that wide reach. But I definitely would not bank on it. You know what I mean? That wouldn't be my one avenue.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because that's kind of the only really avenue I was pursuing for sync because I'm on the East Coast. We don't have like a lot of these expos that people have been pitching. A lot of them have been on the West Coast or out in that direction, so not super close to where I am. But
Yeah, I know there's one that Brooke attended, and it's one in Georgia. I know that's still somewhat further, but there are some resources of sync conferences in that area as well. And I know there's one in Nashville. There's several in Nashville too. So if possible, checking out some of those would be great. But are you interested in writing more for brands or more for film and TV? Like, what is your interest?
honestly, film and TV, I'd prefer to do. Like, I mean, a lot of I kind of write all different types of music, but a lot of what I was trying to do for sync was more like stuff that would be in film and TV. I feel like
Okay.
score stuff a little bit.
Yeah, so that's where I would say iSpot.tv and LinkedIn. I know it sounds so basic, but doing your research there in IMDb and starting to build a contact list of like, okay, this is who these, and you start to see a landscape once you do this. Like spend a couple weeks in that phase building a list. Put a Google Doc together or a Google Sheet and start creating a list of relevant contacts that work on the style of music or that your style might be something fresh to their ears in that direction. Because I think when you're going for something as broad as sync without a true north kind of thing, a north star, it can just be like, okay, well, I tried it, it doesn't work. I had my music on Taxi for 3 years and nothing really came of it. So really niching down, but also staying really wide in all of the ways that you're available. Does that make sense? I don't know if you're speaking, but it's muted.
Sorry, someone was trying to call me literally. It interrupted, so I couldn't switch over. Yes, it does make sense. I do understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so I would like think of it like every couple weeks. How can I get 10 new names to put names to the type of music and the type of things that I want to start pitching to? So you're building real people into your platform of contacts that you can start reaching out to when you're ready. So just having that bank of people, having that really crystal clear vision, like I want to do composing. And when you say composing, like I think this is a great test for sync. What describe like a scene from a film and why your music fits that? Like could you give me the opposite side, so the receiving end of your music? For me, it's like I need a female centric role, and I she's going to be going through some challenges, and there's going to be some emotions happening. It's maybe a little darker content, um, and there's going to be some triumph. There's going to be some tribulations. So I'm writing to the character that I am already writing to in my music. So I have like a very specific vision of like what might work with my music. Does that make sense?
It does, and yeah, I kind of do something similar. I mean, my stuff that I've been writing, it's usually a little slower, a little bit more. I don't want to say dark, but like emotional stuff, and like piano driven, and sometimes strings and stuff like that. But it's definitely in that same kind of wheelhouse where I'm kind of it's more emotional, slower scene, not like an energetic, fight scene or something like that.
Yeah. So having music supervisors that have worked on specific films that or TV shows that you can really pinpoint and start to build a contact list based off of those. And also in LinkedIn, you'll start to see different music houses and different music supervisors that have worked on X, Y, or Z. In IMDb, you will see music houses that have worked on specific film, or, for example, some of the people that I'm connected with, they manage a section of Hulu's whole network. So they write, specifically this genre of TV shows and things like that. So you can start to kind of nail down your research. So then you know what you're pitching to instead of just hoping that someone will find your stuff. I'm not discrediting you that you've been sitting back that hard, but just like really getting clear and really niching is, I think, really important.
Thanks, that's helpful.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey Ashley, it's Brooke.
Hi. Good to see
I'm
you
gonna
again.
ask more. Hey, I'm gonna ask some more questions. I know
Yeah.
I picked your brain on a lot of this, but um, um, so I'll just go off the IDMB. I've never been on that website. Are they like classified by like genre of music that they work with, or like, and to save me time when I go on, like, how do I go about finding the people that would like work on my genre of music? Or
So,
like
mhm.
for film and TV, you know what I mean? Like I only know so many shows myself. I'm sure there's a lot that like I don't know that my music would fit into. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, it's there's really no shortcut to be straight with you. I would say, if you have
Okay.
three to five shows, three to five films, and find out who those people are. Also, with you
Okay.
specifically, I would say, um, reach back out to your Shining Star Network with Tommy Jackson and say, what are some of the ways you would suggest I go in terms of film and TV? What types of networks, what types of shows? Because you have a direct in with a contact already that
Yeah.
works on so much sync placement. um, I would also work it from that angle. But if you're gonna go straight, like we're on the interwebs doing the research, I would find three to five shows and three to five films and just start there. And similarly to when you're on Facebook and you found a friend and you're now trying to find another person and you go through that sequence, like, cool, what other films have they worked on? Does that resonate with me? What other shows are similar to this show, that and they're kind of all connected by the links that you'll see listed. Everybody who worked on that
Okay.
project will be listed. Yeah.
Okay. Great. And then the other question I had is like I did a free sync master class with a music supervisor
Mhm.
like just last week, and I thought it was interesting. And I got to know her through like Tommy Jackson. She was at the conference, but I never spoke to her because I wasn't sure that sync was a good fit for me. But anyways, I like a lot of the master classes I see are from like people pitching, but she was on the other side. So I was like, oh, this will be interesting. And she mentioned that a lot of times, um, the way that they'll pay you based on your sync, they'll check out your social media and stuff and see how many followers you have and all that. And I was just wondering if you'd found that to be true or not. Like they'll pay you more, like the greater your fan base is. I guess I was just kind of like bummed to hear that because it's like, oh, it's not like what we think your music's worth or here's the budget we have. It's like there's also some of that still. It's just like everything's number focused.
Mhm. Yeah, and that also can lead you to finding your why again, like, so if it's important for you to not work with numbers people, it might not be the right avenue. If you want to play the game and you want to be in that mode, you know, because not everybody is looking at that. But, if they are and it's something that you want to reach toward, um I think it's interesting because I do see what I've seen. I'm just going to call it out, and the truth is that I think that a lot of networks prey on the ignorance of independent artists. And so what happens is, for example, there's one specific music house that I won't mention, but basically they create these briefs and then they invite you to their library and they invite you to create music to the briefs. And if you are placed, you just receive the back royalties on ASCAP. You do not get a sync placement fee. It's like they're initiating you or something, like, oh, I got placed, but really they're not value. Like, you could be, for example, Brooke, you are an incredible artist. You're an incredible songwriter. And the fact that you are